American Football Stories.
But just to move forward, and we just want to dive into Mac Jones. So, the narrative surrounding Mac Jones is the fact that, he has that mental makeup where, he's that smart quarterback that's just gonna, cut you up, kind of like a Peyton Manning, kind of cerebral in nature, like a Drew Brees. The arm talent is maybe not there like the Trevor Lawrence and the Justin Fields of the world, but he's going to get you to where you want to get to on the offensive standpoint. But with that being said, what is the one thing that Mac Jones does better than any other quarterback in this draft class?
I do think that one of the things that Mac Jones does extremely well is rule stuff in and out pre-snap. So he has a very good idea of where to go with the football post-snap. He's very good at, okay, this is the look I'm getting. These are the matchups that I've got. And I've got an opportunity to make this throw, read this concept, do this after the snap. And even if that post-snap expectations, those post-snap expectations change because coverage gets rolled or whatever, he has an ability to sort of adapt and adjust to that. So that does sort of get to the mental side of it, the cerebral side of it. And there's a great story that Bill O'Brien needed to learn Alabama's offense. They put him in a room with Mac Jones. They didn't put him in a room with another coach or another quarterback. It was with Mac Jones. And you can see that show up on film. And one of my favorite plays of his, play against Notre Dame early in the game, 2nd and 2. They're sliding the protection to the left. So everybody from the right guard, center, left guard, left tackle, they all slide left. And you've got back right tackle on the right side. Well, what does Notre Dame do? They obviously send the edge rusher and then 2 linebackers blitz from that side. And he knows that. He knows Najee Harris can't block both linebackers. So as second he takes the shotgun snap, rather than go through his drop, he immediately starts to peel away from that, knowing that, look, that's where my weak spot of the protection is. Najee Harris can't block 2 guys. He's not Superman. He's close, but he's not quite there yet. And so I got to bail the pocket. That's that sort of mindset, that mentality that he has that is going to be critical for him because let's face it, he's not the athlete the other 4 guys are. He doesn't have the arm talent the other 4 guys are. His pathway is going to have to win with his mind, with anticipation, making the right reads, getting the ball out on time and rhythm. There's a pathway to do that. Guys like Brady and Breeze and Madden, they've certainly done that. The fear and the hesitation is those are 3 of the best quarterbacks to ever do it. When you're saying that, look, Mac Jones, you can be an NFL quarterback, but you got to be as good as those guys were. That's a heavy lift. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the flip side to that is even if he doesn't get to his ultimate level, the floor is probably Kirk Cousins 2.0. And that's a guy that you can win games with if you put a team around him, like Jordan Reed, who does such great work at the Draft Network and, brilliant football mind, played the quarterback position much better than I ever did, coached at the college level as well. He told me, if you're going to get Mac Jones to be his best, you need the 3 Ps around him: playmakers, protection, and playbook. A team's going to need that. You need it with all 5 guys, but definitely with Jones more than the other 4 to get those pieces right. That's why I think a lot of people looked at San Francisco and said, if they really think that they're still close, right? 2 years away from a Super Bowl, you've got Kittle, you've got Kyle Juszczyk, you've got Brandon Ayuk, you've got some weapons, you've got a decent offensive line, you bring Trent Williams back. Maybe that's all you need is a guy that's a little bit better than Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's Mac Jones. Maybe that is what they're going to do. Again, I wouldn't do it if it's Lawrence, if it's Ed Wilson. Like if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm running to the podium, and I've got Sharpie, Justin Fields. Like, let's go. Like I'll buy. I'm a Patriots fan. I'll buy the Niners Justin Fields jersey. I think it'd be a fantastic environment for him. But maybe that is what they're doing. So I think sort of the feel for the game, the anticipation, the pre-snap reads and things like that, Rob, that's where Mac Jones is at his best. But I do think there are moments where he's not as athletic as the other guys. He doesn't have the arm talent the other guys do. He's a bit more scheme dependent than the other guys. I'm not going to drop him into a Bruce Arians, like no risk it, no biscuit kind of offense. It's going to be pure West Coast, get the ball out on time, on rhythm, option routes, things like that, attack the short areas of the field. He could be a good NFL quarterback in that kind of system, maybe even a, dare we say, great one. But I just like the other guys a bit more, the other 4 guys a bit more, especially if are you drafting a guy to run your offense or transcend your offense? I think the other guys can sort of transcend offenses, where Jones is more the guy that's going to run it and might run it really well, but it's not going to be the explosive type of dynamic system that you might get from the other 4.
Where's 2 or 3 fits that you like for Jones if San Francisco doesn't happen?
I do think, obviously, look, San Francisco. I think New England. I think there's a reason a lot of people have said New England at 15, or maybe if they slide up to like 12 or something, would make a lot of sense. If New England is going to run the Tom Brady sort of Ern Perkins time and rhythm kind of offense we saw during that 20-year run, I think Chicago would be a system where he could run it and run it extremely well. You know, Mitchell Trubisky, they kept running mirrored curl flat. And he still couldn't read it 3-4 years into the NFL. Like, Mac Jones is going to get the ball out on time and in rhythm. And look, when you're Allen Robinson running that curl 12, pressing back to 8, and you've got 3 yards of separation, the ball better be there. If it's not, that 3 yards of set becomes 1. If there's one thing Mac Jones can do, it's to sort of make that anticipation throw so that 3 yards of separation at the break is like 2.5 at the catch point. And now Allen Robinson has a chance to make that 8-yard catch a 12-yard gain. But when 8-yard catch becomes a 7-yard gain because he can't move because the ball's late, that's going to hamstring that offense. So I think Chicago would be another good fit for Mac Jones. I think Matt Nagy, this is the kind of quarterback that he needs, somebody that can just run the offense and do it well. If Jones somehow slips past New England at 15, maybe Chicago goes and makes a move. A lot of people said he's Andy Dalton plus. Well, they just signed Andy Dalton. There you go.
QB1.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely an interesting take that you have there, Mark, on Mac Jones. My thing is that you just like you said, you know, you have to have the 3 Ps around him. Yep. And, you know, if Mac Jones, you know, gets drafted by San Francisco, could he set precedence of having teams, you know, draft a player to fit their scheme more so than drafting the best player available on the board? Because we see that narrative, you know, during the draft process year in and year out. Do you take the best available player on your board, or do you take the player that's going to fit your scheme the best? And right now, it really seems like Mac Jones is the best scheme fit for San Francisco. Just like you said, he's maybe an upgrade from Jimmy G. So do you think, you know, Mac Jones, by getting selected with San Francisco, he can set that precedence moving forward, not only for himself, but for players coming in after him?
I mean, guys, we all know it's a copycat league, right? And so say the San Francisco 49ers, they trade up, they draft Mac Jones at 3, and they make a run. Maybe they don't even win it, but they immediately make a run deep into the playoffs, maybe even get to Super Bowl, you know, 55. Everybody's going to be like, give me my Mac Jones, right? Every NFL owner is going to walk into their coaching office, walk into the head coach's office and say, I want what they just did. We saw it with Sean McVay, right? Pretty much, if you coughed on Sean McVay after he got hired by the Rams, you were getting a head coaching interview. I'm just embarrassed. I didn't like bump into him at the Senior Bowl one year. Maybe I'd be the head coach of the Chicago Bears right now. But we know it. It's a copycat league. If it works, people are going to say, who's the next Mac Jones, right? A couple of years ago, who's the next Joe Burrow? Who's the next like draft riser? Maybe it was Zach Wilson this year. Who's the next Mitch Trubisky? Who's the next Patrick Mahomes? Who's the next Dak Prescott? We're always looking for the next. And so if that, you're right, Rob, if he goes 3 and it works, teams are going to do it. Teams are going to say, just forget the overall talent. Who's the best fit? At the same time, that's what coaches should be doing. They should be looking at these guys and saying, look, can he run what we do? Or is he good enough that we might be a West Coast system, but this guy, Trevor Lawrence, has such a cannon and he's so talented. We'll restructure our offense around what he does. You know, forget this used to be the old square peg round hole syndrome we'd see with these coaches. They draft a quarterback and say he's tailor-made for a West Coast offense, but I'm Jason Garrett. I'm a Coryell disciple. We're going to be a vertical-based passing offense. It doesn't work, you know? You've got to tailor your offense to what the guy you draft can do. Now, it's ideal if what you do and what he's already experienced at is one of the same. Wilson at 2, maybe Jones at 3. You know, but if you're going to be drafted a quarterback, you better be willing to make your offense something he can run rather than forcing him to do something that you want to coach. It shouldn't work that way. Like, tailor your system to the guy, not force the guy into your system.
Yes, and another quarterback that we're going to reference is Trey Lance. So, you know, we mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo earlier, and outside of Carson Wentz and Joe Flacco, we've not seen too many FCS level quarterbacks have major success in the NFL. But with that being said, is the speed of the game the primary reason drafted FCS quarterbacks have struggled in the NFL, or would you contribute to other factors? Because, you know, I'm an SEC guy. Me and Nick, we're Florida Gators fans. So, you know, you've had comments, you know, from players from the SEC get drafted in NFL say, hey, you know, it's not that much difference. More recently, we had Tua who actually said, hey, I thought the NFL will be a little bit harder than what it was. So is it the game speed for those level quarterbacks?
I do think, guys, that game speed is certainly part of it. There's that whole level of competition, the jump from playing at the FCS level, which, there's good football there. But if you're Trey Lance, you're basically at the Alabama of the FCS level. Like, your team's going to be better than most opponents each week. So there is that level of competition. There is that sort of play speed, game speed that's going to take some adjustments. I think, Wentz, Romo, Flacco, they've all had different levels of success, Garoppolo even. And so I don't think that people should be dissuaded from drafting quarterbacks from that level, but I do think you have to have measured expectations of what they can and can't do, perhaps early and out of the gate. Similar to the Jones discussion, I think San Francisco would also be a great fit for Trey Lance. If you look at the 21 personnel, fullback, tight end heavy offense that Shanahan was using the past couple of years, and then watch North Dakota State under Trey Lance, it's almost one of the same. I mean, you can go on coachtube.com and you can sort of see some of the videos that the NDSU offensive coordinators put together, and he's breaking down Trey Lance film. You're $49.99. How we get the fullback and tight end involved in the passing game. And you see Trey Lance rolling out half boots, play action, 21 personnel, fullbacks open in the flat, check it down. It's like you're watching San Francisco. And so if the idea that San Francisco wants to get a guy that's a scheme fit but can also transcend their offense, that's why you're seeing some numbers maybe moving Trey Lance's direction at 3. So maybe it's Jones, maybe it's Trey Lance, who knows? But Lance will have some things to overcome. We talked about the accuracy. He's going to see tougher, more complex rotations than he saw. Central Arkansas got him. His only college interception was a rotation that he missed, and he knows that. But I also think it's important to remember he was given a ton of responsibility at the line of scrimmage. Before his first pro day, Randy Hedberg, his quarterback's coach, met with the media. My colleague at USA Today, Doug Farrar, asked him a ton of questions, and he talked about the kill calls, the maybe calls, the checks, the protections, all the stuff that Lance was doing first start against Butler. That's the stuff that Stick and Wentz were doing as seniors. These coaches gave him the freedom. They trusted him early in his career to do that. And if you watch his first start against Butler, they brought up his 50-yard touchdown run. If people remember that play, that was a check that he made at the line of scrimmage. He saw that Butler was burning pressure, and he said, look, I'm going to get us out of this, get him to his QB run, and he takes it for a touchdown. The game against James Madison, the national championship game, people say, oh, well, NDSU didn't trust him in that game. They made him run it 30 times because they didn't trust him to throw. Those were checks from him. They were showing pressure looks that he was getting out of passes and into runs. That wasn't a quarterback that they were afraid of, doing things. They were calling passes. He was getting them into favorable plays as a quarterback at the line of scrimmage. And so he was given a lot of trust and responsibility at the line of scrimmage. So I think he's smart, ready to handle life as an NFL QB. Like, there might be a learning curve, sure, especially coming from the FCS, the complex rotations, the faster athletes, but I think he can get there. I'm not worried about that aspect of it from him.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube, and we'd love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter, at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Knudsen. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.